Welcome to the Family Answer Man podcast. This is episode 60 of the Family Answer Man, and today we are answering your questions about life after divorce from my Biblical Worldview on the Family Answer Man podcast. I'm your host, David Orges, and I am here with Dr. Mark Crosby, pastor, educator, and marriage and family therapist, and our resident expert here on the Family Answer Man. We're tackling tough questions that families face and discuss practical solutions that really do work. Now, this podcast is not a therapy session. We're not able to give specific advice to your situations, but we do believe that mental health and spiritual health are very serious issues, and family dynamics can be and often are very complicated. So, for in-depth answers to your questions, we want to encourage you to seek professional counsel specific to your unique circumstances. If you would, take a second just right now to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit the bell so you never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. And if you're listening via your favorite podcast, I want you to ask you, just take a moment and rate and review us on that podcast app. It really does help us out. We really do appreciate it. And if our content has helped you out at all, please share the Family Answer Man with your family and friends so they can join you on this journey of building stronger, healthier, and happier families. Well, Dr. Mark, we're talking about a topic today, life after divorce, that most people hope that they will never find themselves in, but many eventually do.
Yes, about half of our population will experience divorce at least once. And of course, some will experience it 2 and 3 times. As we, again, see the stressors of life, as we deal with the concerns and issues of life, as people struggle with their relationships. And so divorce is a very common thing, far more common than we want to believe or imagine. No one thinks of themselves as experiencing it, or that they will experience, especially in their first marriage. But unfortunately, it is becoming extremely common, and both in the church and outside the church. I mean, no matter who you are or where you come from, it is a real possibility, and it's very unfortunate that it does happen as frequently as it does.
Yeah. So with that said, our question for today is very simple, but it is a big question, and as you pointed out already, a lot of people probably have asked this question before, and it's this. It's how does one move on in life after a divorce?
Right. So we have to be just upfront and real that, number one, divorce can be and will be traumatic. It's rare that there's such a thing as a simple, wrinkle-free, emotional-free divorce. Divorce 98% of the time is traumatic and very difficult. And the reason for that is because it is the end of the hopes and dreams you once had with that person.
Wow.
And there's no other way to put it. I mean, we can't candy coat it. It is the end of the hopes and dreams you had with that person. I mean, if we're going to be honest, everyone who's ever got married had hopes and dreams of what their marriage was going to look like, what their relationship would look like, what their future was going to look like. And they had these hopes and they had these dreams. And so when those hopes and dreams end because of divorce, it's traumatic. And so one of the reasons why it's traumatic is because it is the end, but also it's a feeling of failure. People often feel like they have failed. They have failed in a very wonderful, unique covenant called marriage, and now it's over. And so there's a feeling of failure. What's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Why did I pick the wrong person, or whatever it may be? I mean, there's 1,001 different thoughts that goes through the mind of a person when they're going through a divorce, and when they look back over their life and they, again, have to reflect on that divorce. Next, there's a sense of embarrassment. Sometimes a person will not go to a family function. They won't go to a high school reunion. They won't go to a holiday event because they don't want to have to answer the questions.
Right.
How are you and your husband doing?
Just don't have to deal with it.
How are you and your wife doing? Exactly. And they don't want to have to answer the question about their relationship, about their marriage, about their family. And so there is a sense of embarrassment. They don't want to, go down that road, and they know people will ask them about, what happened or what's going on. How I didn't know. I'm so sorry. And now, you're basically, pulling, that bandage off that wound again and again and again. And so there is a sense of embarrassment. Next, there is a sense of loss. The loss of time you invested. I mean, most people who divorce have spent years together, both in the dating time frame as well as husband and wife. And so there's all this time that was invested, And now because of the divorce, there's a sense of I've lost all that time. Right. I invested in this person. I gave to this person. I put this person through college. I put this person through, seminary or through medical school or whatever, and now look what's happened. Next, there's that loss of the emotion that was invested. A person, I've heard people say in my office, I gave them my heart. Yeah. I gave them my life. I gave them everything that I had, and they took it and they threw it all away. And so there's that loss of the emotional investment, loss of time, also just the loss of the person. When you, again, have been with someone 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and now that person is out of your life, there's a sense of loss, even though there was acrimony and even though there was truculence and even though there was all this dissonance that you experienced, and we fought all the time and, we never got along and we couldn't communicate. When that person is out of your life, there may be a relief in that regard, but that person is still out of your life and there's still a loss, right? It's like anybody who's lost a pet, even though that pet may have, chewed up your sneakers and, caused a mess in the kitchen or whatever. When you come home and they're not there, there is a sense of loss. And so again, these people have been in our life for years, and now they're gone. So there's that. Second, divorce can be financially debilitating. Because now you're splitting property, and now you are dealing with child support. In some states, you're dealing with alimony. In some areas, you're dealing with retirement accounts. And so there's this financial loss that you're experiencing. What you once had together, everything is now split in two. And in some ways, and in some cases, a person may feel that's not fair. I've heard men say to me, well, I made all the money, and she stayed home. Well, in the state of Louisiana, it's community property, and 50% belongs to both parties. So the reality is that there is a financial concern when divorce occurs. It can be relationally devastating. First of all, with children. Now for the first time, you're a part-time parent. And no matter how you want to slice it, and no matter how that may sting, that's the reality. And I've had to tell that to people. When they're contemplating divorce and they're coming to my office and I'm getting out of this and I hate her and I hate him, and I'm going to go, that's fine, I understand, I get it, I'm sorry that you're going through this, but just know that you're about to be a part-time parent. Yeah. And boy, you ought to see how the eyes kind of bulge, and sometimes, there's this frown and there's this change of countenance and there's this sense of, like I just told them, you got, 2 days left, you have to live. Right. It's kind of like, what are you talking about? But it's true. You no longer are going to be there in some cases for holidays or for birthdays. You may not be there on a Christmas morning. You may not be there for maybe even a special occasion or event in their life. You may not be able to go to a ball game or whatever it may be because of this change in life. Also, relationally devastating to parents. Your parents may have loved their daughter-in-law or their son-in-law, and maybe thought of them as another daughter or as another son. And now the parents are going, we still love her, we still love him. What do we do? Right. And so there's that. Also, with your in-laws, you may, as a son-in-law, daughter-in-law, may have a great attachment or connection, to your in-laws. You may see them as another set of parents, and now things have changed. Sometimes with friends, friends aren't quite sure where to land. Yeah. Their story is, we used to play cards together. We used to go bowling together or whatever, and now we no longer do that. And some will say, hey, if he calls, I'm not sure what to say because we did things as a couple. Now he wants to go golfing, and I feel like if I go golfing with him, I'm showing some disloyalty to, his ex or whatever it may be. And so the friends feel a little awkward. So there's always going to be that relational difficulty when divorce occurs. Not only that, then next it can be spiritually difficult. Many feel like they have disappointed God. Many feel like they've broken a vow. Many feel like that they made a vow before God and before their family and their friends, and now they're breaking it. And so they feel like they're a big disappointment to God and to their church. Some feel like they've committed the unpardonable sin. And I remind them they haven't. There's only one unpardonable sin, and divorce is not it. And so that's important to understand, even though I hate to say this, but there are some pastors and there's some priests and there are some, theologians out there that want to turn divorce into the unpardonable sin, but the Bible does not support that. And people can write me about that later. We can talk about that maybe on another program. But the reality is divorce is not the unpardonable sin. But sometimes a church will make it that way. I've seen churches treat people who have been divorced as second-class citizens. They can't serve on boards or agencies or serve on staff, or they can't serve on committees, or they can't, be a deacon or whatever it may be because of this situation. So again, it's not the unpardonable sin, but many feel like that it is. Some therefore feel like God can't forgive them. They feel like this is a perpetual sin that will never be able to be forgiven, and it will never be reconciled, if you will. And so they carry that with them. Next is a personal sense of lost purpose. For a lot of people, when you are married, this person was my world. This person was my everything. And now they're gone. And so now the person is saying, maybe the husband, maybe the wife, now what do I do? They were my purpose. They were my everything. I lived for them. I got up in the morning to make them happy. And now they're gone. Now what do I do? So there's a real sense of grief when you're dealing with divorce. And as we know, the first 4 stages of grief are denial. I can't believe this is happening to me. When you realize it is, you get angry. You get angry with yourself. What did I do wrong? You get angry with your spouse or your ex-spouse for maybe what they've done. You try to bargain. You try to reason. You try to create some rationale as to what could be helpful in this situation. And when none of those things work, you go back into a depression. So divorce really is, again, a very traumatic thing. And it also depends on the reason for divorce. There are many reasons for divorce. The reasons are almost endless. But if you were to take the top 4 reasons that most people say they divorce, it's going to be one of these 4. Number 1, adultery. When I do marriage counseling, one of the first questions I will ask a couple, and this is something that maybe those who are listening, if you're driving with your spouse, maybe you can talk about this after the program's over. But one thing I ask a couple as they're getting ready for marriage, what would it take to end this marriage?
Which most people see in premarital counseling as a very strange question, but
Exactly.
It's a great question.
It's a very strange question because right now they're just head over heels in love. They're looking forward to, their wedding. They're looking forward to, all the things that go with the wedding day and all the things that go with the wedding night and all the things that go with the honeymoon and all the things that go with, getting, gifts and, pats on the back and congratulations and all these things. But the question still remains, what would it take to end this marriage? Because unfortunately, and I say this sometimes to couples, you, based on stats, have a 50% chance of making it. Now, that sometimes is a very sobering reality. So I ask, what would it take? And I've heard 90% of the time, the number one answer is adultery.
Right.
If he's unfaithful, she's unfaithful. I've had 1 or 2 say to me, there is nothing that could ever happen. And unfortunately, whenever I hear that, I get word years later, this couple is no longer together. So if we're going to be real, the first and number 1 answer for divorce is adultery. The second one is abuse.
Right.
If they were to be abusive, if they were to hurt me or hurt the children or whatever. The third one is addiction. Addiction devastates relationships. It devastates marriages. It is very, very difficult for most people to live with an addict because all the addict cares about is their next fix. And then fourthly, abandonment. And so abandonment becomes a reality, to a lot of people when the person leaves, and never comes back or leaves with someone else or whatever it may be. So again, depending on the reason for divorce also depends upon, again, the level of trauma that a person will experience.
And I'm glad you ran through all of that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you prefaced all of that with the reality that, look, we're just gonna address these things right up front at the beginning that divorce can be and will be traumatic because there's a reality that has to be acknowledged, and unless you address that, then you can't deal with the rest of what we're about to talk about. Exactly.
And so the point is that divorce should never be taken lightly. But unfortunately, I think we live in a day and age where marriage, and you even see this, on various websites or whatever, that marriage is no longer held with the sacredness it once was.
Right.
When one of the great comparisons of the boomer generation with today's generation, and that is, not only do boomers, like bell bottoms and TV dinners, and golf, but boomers believe in marriage. Okay, whereas today's generation, not so much, and that's a very sad commentary on our culture.
Yeah,
it's a very sad commentary that we no longer hold sacred this vow, this covenant called marriage. Yeah. And so because so many, in this culture, so many in this generation, so to speak, take marriage so lightly, they don't realize how devastating it is. And so I've told this story before, but years ago I was doing a wedding, and of course there was this banter, right before during the wedding rehearsal, some uncle was saying, well, now's the time to let her know if you're going to stay around, or this is, you can leave now. This is the only time you can go, because after tomorrow, she's got you and you're whatever. And one of the bridesmaids kept hearing this, she's, tomorrow it's all over. Tomorrow, she's got you. And this bridesmaid kept looking at this, and finally she said, he can always get a divorce. And I'm thinking, wow.
Not the attitude you want to bring into your marriage.
The mindset of so many, 20-somethings today that, well, you can always get a divorce. It's kind of like, well, you can always take it back to the store if it doesn't fit.
Right, yeah.
You can always take it back to the store if, you get tired of it. You can always take it back and get your money back. And the loss of the sacredness of marriage, I think, is what's devastating so many people, because you don't realize just how traumatic this is once you go down that road of divorce.
Right, and it really is unbelievable how many people see your first marriage as your practice marriage.
Yeah. It's like so many people say, this is our starter home.
Right.
It's a little 2-bedroom, home, in a brand new little neighborhood, and that's going to be our starter home. It's not our forever home, it's our starter home. And so many people see their first marriage kind of, well, this is my starter marriage,
Right.
Once I kind of figure out how this works, who knows? I might I may go up a few.
Might upgrade, right? Yeah, no, that works for homes, not for marriages.
Yeah, I may do an upgrade, yeah. So again, here's the point. It should never be the immediate go-to. Divorce should never be the immediate go-to. And if it happens, and unfortunately 50% of the time it will, it's good and important to put a plan in place so that you can move on.
Okay, a plan to move forward, yeah.
So, and this is what this person's wanting in this question. How do you move forward? Is there a life after divorce? And so first of all, you have to recognize and realize several things. Number one, life does continue on. Life does continue on. When you have been served those papers, when you signed off on that judgment, when the judge has decreed you are now divorced, it's going to take you back. It's going to hit you, even though you may have been separated for a year or two. It is going to hit you. Let me just pause just for a moment, just a little sidebar. Just because a couple is separated, doesn't mean they're divorced, okay? And the reason why I say that is because I meet so many couples who, okay, they're still married, but now they're separated. One's living in an apartment, one's living in the home that they were raising their kids in, but they're separated. But they start acting like they're divorced. They want to start dating. They want to start, going out. They want to, and I'm saying, wait a minute. You're not divorced yet. So be careful about, yes, we're separate. Yeah, you're separate, but you're legally you're still married. So that's important. So even though you've been separated for a while, and even though you're looking forward to this divorce, here's my next point. When that moment happens, it really does hit you with a flood of emotions. And I tell people all the time, beware of that. Be mindful of that. But the real point, though, is this. Life does continue on. After your divorce has been finalized, life goes on. Life does continue. Number one. Number two, God is gracious.
Yes, he is.
God is gracious. And even though you may have felt like, hey, I failed God, I failed my vows, whatever, God is gracious. Thirdly, there's certain principles that you must put into motion. And that first principle is this: no major anything for a year. Meaning,
no major anything. I like that. That covers it all.
Here's what I mean by that. No major moves. I meet so many couples who say, well, now that I'm divorced, even though you may not even have kids, I'm going to move, to another state, or I'm going to move to Alaska, or I'm going to move to Hawaii, I'm going to move to California. No major moves for a year. Number two, no major purchases. I've seen some people, cash in their 401k and buy a Corvette. No, that's not a wise thing to do. No major purchases the first year. No major changes. I've seen people quit their jobs and go and try to, create a
startup company,
surfboard rental, in Destin, Florida, or whatever. And no, that's not a wise. Now's not the time to do that. No major changes. But most importantly, no major relationships for the first year after divorce.
Now, some people are going to hear that and they're going to push back on that.
Of course they will.
Why is that so important?
Because you're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready. Even though you want to have somebody in your life, I get it, but you're not ready. Again, I meet so many people who say, I want to find the right person. Well, that's great, but you need to be the right person also. And so and the way I like to think of it is this. Suppose you love running. You love to run. You enjoy running. You jog all day. You run. You do marathons and all that. Great. But if you sprain your ankle on Monday and there's half marathon coming up on Friday, you're not ready to do that. Your ankle is still not ready. You're not healed.
Even if you're looking forward to it.
Even though you love to run, you're looking forward to it, you've been wanting to do this all, you're not ready. You're not healed. And what will happen is you will do more harm than good to your ankle and maybe to those around you. Because when you trip and fall and you trip, others may trip and fall over you. I mean, the list could go on. They spill their hot coffee, whatever. It's just a fiasco. But the point is, you're not ready. And so what I tell people is this. I know you want someone in your life. I know you want to prove to yourself that you still have it. I know you want to prove to your ex that other people find you attractive and interesting and all these things. But give yourself a year to heal. And people who have followed that advice have called back, written back and said, look, best thing I ever did, best thing I ever heard, because all I would be to anybody else, or all they would be to me, would be a rebound. And nobody wants to be somebody's rebound.
No, and you can't start a new healthy relationship on a rebound.
No. And even though, there may be some other perks, the reality is all you're going to do is hurt yourself and hurt someone else. Next, see a counselor. Because you are emotionally wounded and you are emotionally traumatized. You don't realize the depth that you are, but you are. And you're not going to think clearly for about a year either. You are not, because your brain has been traumatized. It is rewiring, by the day. Yeah. We talked about that in some previous episodes. And you're not going to think clearly for about a year. As depression, grief, anxiety, and loneliness begin to take over, you need to see a counselor, because the reality is you're emotionally wounded, you're traumatized, and you're not going to think clearly for about a year. And the reason for that is depression, grief, anxiety, and loneliness are starting to take over your heart, your mind, your emotions. And if you don't have a counselor to process this, to work through this, to have someone you can go to on at least a weekly or every other week basis to kind of just get your thoughts and emotions in check, these things are going to consume you. The grief's going to consume you. The loneliness is going to consume you. The depression is going to consume you.
And why is it important to see a counselor when you could, many people would see it, be able to deal with depression, loneliness, grief by being in another relationship?
Well, because the other relationship is not going to, even though it may give a temporary fix, it's not going to heal the depth of the wounds of the marriage and the divorce that has been lost. And so again, you may have a temporary moment of, hey, yes, this is wonderful. Hey, I had a great time. This was a great date. But that's like saying, my ankle is sprung, I've really messed it up. And it's in a cast and it feels good now, but I still can't run on it.
Right.
And so the point is that the therapist helps with the deep emotional trauma that you've experienced, to help sort out, some of the feelings and the emotions that want to, again, cause you to say things and do things that perhaps are not rational or reasonable. And so These areas will try to consume you. Next, do not turn to any type of addictive behaviors. Please, please, please do not start consuming alcohol. I mean, so many people start turning to alcohol because, they feel lonely and they failed in their marriage and now they're divorced. Don't get involved in pornography. Don't get involved in drugs or gambling. Anything that is going to be addictive that will start to take over your life and consume your life and make things even worse than they were before. Some things that, again, I want to encourage you to think about is do exercise. Get outdoors. I know it's hot or whatever, but, after the sun goes down, walk the park, walk the neighborhood.
There's always options.
Exactly. Go to a gym, but do something that causes you to feel better about yourself after you've exercised. Start swimming or whatever it may be. Go to the YMCA. Eat some good food, in other words, eat things that are nutritious and not just, cake and coffee all day, but drink, Gatorade, drink juices, do things that are going to be helpful to your body. Join a recovery group. There are a lot of churches who have recovery groups because, it's good for people to hear your story and it's good for you to hear the story of other people. Realizing that you're not alone in this, realizing that you're not the only one going through this. Go to church. You need God now more than ever. You need the grace of God. You need the love of God. You need the support of God's people. And if you're not getting the support of God's people in your church, there are churches out there that will support you.
That's right.
So go to church, go to small groups, go to Bible studies, yes, you can join a Singles Again group or whatever at your church if it has one, but just get involved that has something to do with prayer, Bible study, worship, where you feel a connection. Next, this may be difficult for some, but try to be as civil and as considerate as possible with your ex. And the reason for that is this. If you're not civil and if you're not considerate, the stress will consume you. And being inconsiderate and being uncivil in relationships with your ex, all that does is that it just compounds the stress, and stress will consume you. Do things in groups for a while, in that first year or so after divorce. Do things in groups, eat out in groups, go to movies in groups, go to ball games or tailgating, if you will, in groups. Reconnect with old relationships, meaning cousins you haven't seen in a while, friends from high school that you used to hang out with. Now would be a good time to give them a call and say hello. So, real quickly, after that 1 year is complete, be careful about who you date. If you're a Christian, let church be a source of the fellowship that you attend and that you're a part of. In other words, when you're doing things, with this person that you're dating, let church be a part of what you're doing. If you're in therapy, you might want eventually this person to join you in therapy. And the reason for that is if this person is significant in your life and you've been dating for a while, there may be some things that you want to share with this person with your therapist, and your therapist may want to meet this person. And they may see some things, or they may be able to endorse some things that's there. If you're not dating, do some things you've always wanted. Take that trip. Take that course, join that gym, learn how to fill in the blank, play golf, tennis, jiu-jitsu, piano, for our older group, pickleball, okay? Right. Whatever it may be, but learn how to do some things you've always wanted to do. Now would be a good time to do that. If dating is not your thing, I mean, a lot of people who say, I don't want to date right now, great. Then learn how to play the piano, go back to college, take that course. Take that, that short-term course. LSU offers them. Other universities offer little short-term courses. The point is this: divorce is tough. It is not easy. But if you have a plan, if you know the do's and don'ts, then you will not only survive the divorce, but you will thrive later on in life. And then as you become the right person, and then when you meet the right person, I want to believe that God can and will give you a second chance, a third chance. I've met these people. I have counseled these people. I have encouraged these people. I know these people. And many of them will say, you know what? God's grace was amazing. I got through a very difficult time in life, but you know what? My life's now better than ever before. And I am so glad for the things I've learned and the grace I've been given and the love that I now have.
Well, there you have it from the Family Answer Man himself. We serve a gracious God who can forgive and does forgive. And we just want to encourage you that if you appreciated today's show, to share it with someone that you know, someone that you love. And we hope that this episode of the Family Answer Man will encourage you and inspire you to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, and happier family.